If you've ever had someone steal your identity, ruin your credit, and walk away laughing while you picked up the pieces, hit that like button. Subscribe if you believe that karma doesn't forget addresses, because what I'm about to tell you proves that sometimes justice takes years to arrive, but when it does, it sits right across the desk wearing your smile. My name is Violet. I'm 34 years old. And the day I realized my stepbrother had destroyed my financial future was the same day I learned that trust is a luxury poor people can't afford. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began, because every story of revenge starts with a wound deep enough to leave scars. I was 17 when my mother, Patricia, married Vincent Shaw. He came into our lives like a storm disguised as sunshine, all charm and promises wrapped in expensive cologne. Mom had been alone for 8 years after my father died in a construction accident, working double shifts at the diner just to keep our lights on. Vincent seemed like the answer to prayers I didn't know she'd been whispering. He owned a small contracting business, drove a decent truck, and most importantly, he looked at my mother like she mattered. I wanted to be happy for her. I really did. But Vincent came with baggage. His name was Theo. Theo Shaw was 19, 2 years older than me, with a kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. From the first day Theo moved into our small 3-bedroom house, he acted like he owned every inch of it, including me. He'd walk around shirtless, use my things without asking, eat food I'd specifically labeled with my name. When I complained, Vincent would laugh it off as sibling bonding. Mom stayed quiet, terrified of rocking a boat she'd barely climbed into. Theo had dropped out of college after one semester, claiming business school was beneath him. He had big dreams, he'd tell anyone who'd listen about starting companies and making millions. But dreams don't pay rent. While Vincent worked his contracting jobs and Mom kept pulling double shifts, Theo floated through life convinced the world owed him everything. I watched him carefully. I'd learned early that handsome faces often hide ugly intentions. I graduated high school with honors and a full scholarship to State University for accounting. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, earned through late nights studying while Theo partied downstairs with friends who treated our home like a free hotel. The day I got my acceptance letter, Mom cried happy tears. Vincent congratulated me with a firm handshake. Theo barely looked up from his phone. 3 months before I was supposed to leave for college, everything fell apart. Vincent's business hit rough times. A major client defaulted on payment, leaving him with unpaid contractors and mounting debts. The tension in our house became suffocating. Mom picked up a third part-time job. Vincent grew quieter, older somehow. And Theo started looking at me differently. One evening, Theo cornered me in the kitchen while everyone else was out. He had that smile plastered on his face, the one he used when he wanted something. "Violet, we're family now, right?" he said, leaning against the counter like we were old friends. I kept washing dishes, refusing to make eye contact. He continued anyway. "Dad's business is struggling. We might lose the house." I stayed silent, soap suds dripping from my hands. He moved closer. "You're smart with money stuff. You're going to college for it. I need a favor, a small business loan to help Dad out. Just put your name on it since your credit is clean. I'll handle all the payments." My stomach twisted. "Absolutely not," I said firmly. Theo's smile faded. He tried charm first. "Come on, Violet. Don't be selfish. This is about family." When charm didn't work, he switched to guilt. "Your mom would be devastated if we lost this house. Do you want her back in that tiny apartment, working herself to death again?" Then came the veiled threats. "It would be really unfortunate if something happened to your college fund. You know how easy it is to lose track of money." I looked him dead in the eye and said one word. "Mo." He stared at me for a long moment, his jaw tight, before walking away without another word. I thought that was the end of it. I was so catastrophically wrong. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from Westside Community Bank congratulating me on my approved business loan of $28,000. My hands shook as I read the document. I hadn't applied for any loan. I called the bank immediately, my voice trembling as I tried to explain there must be some mistake. The loan officer sounded confused. Miss Violet, we have your application right here. Your signature, your social security number, your employment information. Everything was verified. My blood ran cold. I demanded to see the paperwork. When I arrived at the bank, sitting across from a bored-looking officer named Mr. Peterson, I saw my own signature on documents I'd never touched. It was close, skilled even, but not quite right. The pressure on certain letters was different. Someone had practiced forging my handwriting. Someone who'd seen me write countless times. Someone who lived in my house. Theo. I rushed home, fury propelling me through the front door like a hurricane. Theo sat on the couch, playing video games without a care in the world. "What did you do?" I screamed, throwing the loan papers at him. He paused his game slowly, looking at the documents scattered across his lap with mock confusion. "Oh, that. Yeah, I handled it." "Handling it," I repeated, my voice rising. "You committed fraud. You stole my identity." He shrugged, actually shrugged like he'd borrowed a sweater without asking. "Relax. I'm making the payments. Your credit is fine. Besides, you said no and we needed the money." I couldn't breathe. The casual way he admitted to destroying my future made my vision blur with rage. I told Vincent and Mom that night. I expected outrage, demands for consequences, and immediate action. Instead, I got excuses. Vincent looked tired, defeated. "Violet," he said quietly, "Theo shouldn't have done that, but the money already went to saving the business. If we report this, he'll go to jail. Is that what you want?" Mom touched my arm gently. "Sweetheart, he's family now. He promised to make the payments. Can't we just let this go? Let it go. Let it go like he hadn't committed a federal crime. Like my name, my credit, my entire financial future wasn't collateral damage in Theo's selfish scheme." I looked at these people I'd called family and realized I was completely alone. That night I called the police anyway. The officer who took my report looked sympathetic but delivered the harsh truth. "Identity theft cases are difficult, miss. Especially within families. You'd need to press charges against your stepbrother. He'd likely face jail time. The investigation could take months. Your stepfather and mother would be subpoenaed. It would tear your family apart. Plus, even if convicted, getting your money back is complicated." I sat in that police station, 18 years old with my whole life ahead of me, and made the hardest calculation I've ever made. Pressing charges meant destroying my mother's marriage, losing my home, and spending years in legal battles. Letting it go meant swallowing poison and hoping I'd survive. Chose survival. I told the officer I needed time to think. I never went back. But I didn't forgive. I documented everything. Kept copies of all the loan papers, recorded the dates, screenshotted every text message where Theo casually mentioned the loan. I created a file folder labeled Evidence and stored it in 3 separate locations. Then I went to college, worked 2 jobs to cover expenses my scholarship didn't, and watched from a distance as Theo's promises turned to ash. The payments stopped after 6 months. My credit score plummeted. Collection agencies started calling my dorm room at all hours, demanding money I'd never spent. I was denied a credit card, denied a car loan, denied an apartment lease. All because my stepbrother decided my future was worth less than his convenience. Every rejection was a knife, but I kept moving forward. I graduated in 4 years despite everything, magna cum laude with my accounting degree and a minor in business finance. I took a job at a small firm in a different city, 3 hours away from the family that had failed me. Mom called occasionally. Her voice always tinged with guilt she never quite acknowledged. Vincent called once to apologize, but it was hollow, empty words that changed nothing. Theo never called at all. I spent the next 5 years rebuilding. I disputed the loan collections, filed paperwork, slowly crawled my way out of the financial grave Theo had dug for me. I worked overtime, saved aggressively, and studied for my CPA certification with a fury that surprised even me. Every hour of sleep I lost, every social event I skipped, every dollar I squeezed from my budget was fuel for a fire Theo had started. By the time I was 28, I'd climbed from junior accountant to senior financial analyst at Morrison & Blake, a respected firm specializing in business loans and financial consulting. My credit was finally restored. My savings account had 5 figures. I'd bought a small condo with a view of the city skyline. I'd built a life from the ruins Theo had left behind. Then I got the call. "Violet, this is Brian Foster from Grandview Financial Group. We've been following your work at Morrison & Blake. We're impressed. We'd like to discuss a position as our senior loan officer." The salary they offered made my breath catch. The benefits were extraordinary. And the location, back in my hometown, the city I'd fled a decade ago. I should have said no. But something whispered yes. I accepted the position and moved back 6 weeks later. Mom was thrilled to have me closer, though our relationship had never quite recovered from her choosing Vincent's peace over my justice. I kept her at arm's length, coffee twice a month, surface-level conversations about weather and work. She never asked about the loan. I never volunteered. 3 months into my new role at Grandview Financial Group, I'd established myself as the toughest loan officer in the department. My approval ratings were high because I was thorough, but I had a reputation for denying loans to anyone who showed red flags in their financial history. I didn't believe in second chances for people who'd proven they couldn't handle responsibility. Then one Tuesday morning, my assistant knocked on my office door. "Violet, your 9 o'clock appointment is here," she said, checking her tablet. "Theodore Shaw, requesting a business loan renewal." The world stopped spinning. I'd known this day might come eventually. Grandview Financial Group serviced dozens of small businesses in the area. But knowing and experiencing are 2 different continents. "Send him in," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake in my chest. I had 30 seconds to compose myself before the door opened and Theo walked into my office. He'd aged, of course. His hairline had receded slightly. He'd gained weight around his middle. The cocky confidence had dimmed but not disappeared entirely. He looked at me, recognition dawning slowly across his face, followed by something that might have been fear. "Violet," he said, stopping in the doorway. "Mr. Shaw," I replied coolly, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. "Please sit down." He moved like a man walking toward a cliff edge, uncertain and careful. I let the silence stretch, watching him squirm while I pulled up his file on my computer. The information loaded, and I had to suppress a smile. Theodore Shaw had taken out a small business loan 7 years ago for an online retail venture that had failed within 18 months. He'd barely managed to restructure the debt before defaulting entirely. Now he was requesting a renewal to start a new venture, some kind of consulting business. His credit score was abysmal. His business plan was vague at best. His collateral was practically non-existent. In other words, he was exactly the kind of applicant I specialized in rejecting. "So, Mr. Shaw," I began, my tone professional and detached. "Tell me about your business proposal." He launched into a rambling pitch about business consulting, helping small companies optimize their operations, leveraging his experience in the field. It was clear within 2 minutes that he had no real plan, no specific expertise, and no understanding of what he was actually proposing. I let him talk, watching him dig his own grave with every vague promise and unsubstantiated claim. When he finally stopped, I looked him directly in the eye and said, "Your previous loan defaulted after 18 months. What makes you think this venture would be different?" He shifted uncomfortably. "That was a learning experience. I've grown since then. I've matured." "Have you?" I asked, pulling up his credit report. "Because your credit history suggests otherwise. Multiple late payments, 2 collection accounts, and a pattern of financial irresponsibility that spans over a decade." Theo's face flushed red. "Look, Violet," he started, his voice taking on that familiar wheedling tone. "We're family. You know me. You know I'm good for it." I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands calmly. "Mr. Shaw, my personal relationships don't influence my professional decisions. Every application is evaluated on its merits." He leaned forward, desperation creeping into his voice. "Come on. Don't be like this. That thing from years ago, I've changed. I paid that back eventually. You paid back the loan you took out in my name, I clarified, my voice sharp as glass. The one you forged my signature on. The one that destroyed my credit for 5 years. That loan. The color drained from his face. He glanced toward the door like he was considering running. I didn't, he whispered. You did, I interrupted, opening my desk drawer and pulling out a folder I'd kept for 12 years. I have all the documentation right here. Police reports I filed. Copies of the forged signatures. Bank statements showing when the payments stopped. Collection notices sent to my college dorm. All of it. Theo stared at the folder like it was a bomb. Why didn't you? He trailed off. Press charges, I finished. Because I was 18 and terrified of destroying my mother's life. Because everyone told me to let it go. 'Cause I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd learn something from it. His jaw tightened. So what, this is revenge? You're denying my loan because of something that happened over a decade ago. I'm denying your loan, I said clearly, because you are a high-risk applicant with poor credit, no collateral, a history of default, and a business plan that wouldn't pass a freshman business class evaluation. The fact that you also committed identity theft against me 12 years ago and never once apologized simply makes this decision easier. Theo stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You can't do this. I'll report to you. I'll tell your boss we have history. Go ahead, I said calmly. I've already disclosed our family connection to my supervisor. He's aware that you're my stepbrother and that we have a complicated history. He trusts my professional judgment. In fact, he asked me specifically if I wanted someone else to handle this case. I chose to take it myself. Why? Theo demanded, his voice cracking slightly. Why would you do that? I stood up slowly, meeting him at eye level across my desk. 'Cause I wanted you to know what it feels like, I said quietly. To need something desperately. To ask someone for help. And to be told no by the one person who has every reason to destroy you but chooses professional courtesy instead. I'm not denying this loan out of revenge, Theo. I'm denying it because you don't deserve it. You never learned. You never changed. You're still the same selfish person who thought my future was disposable. He stood there, breathing hard, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. For a moment I thought he might actually lose control, might flip my desk or throw something. Instead, he just stared at me with something like disbelief. You're really not going to help me, he said finally. I'm really not, I confirmed. He turned and walked toward the door. His shoulders slumped in defeat. When he reached the handle, he paused without turning around. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for what I did back then. I was young and stupid and desperate. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am sorry. I watched him standing there, this man who'd stolen my identity and my peace of mind, and felt absolutely nothing. Your apology is 12 years late, I said. And it doesn't change my decision. He nodded once and left, closing the door softly behind him. I sat back down, my hands finally shaking now that he was gone. I'd waited 12 years for this moment, imagined it 1,000 different ways. I thought I'd feel triumphant, vindicated, powerful. Instead, I just felt tired. That evening my phone rang. It was Mom. Violet, honey, Theo called me, she said, her voice strained. He said you denied his loan application. Is that true? It is, I confirmed. Sweetheart, I know you're still upset about what happened years ago, but don't you think you're being a bit harsh? He really needs this loan. He's trying to turn his life around. Mom, I said, keeping my voice level. I denied his loan because he's a bad investment. His credit is terrible. His business plan is non-existent. He has a history of defaulting. This isn't personal. It's professional. But you could have helped him, she pressed. As a family. Could have, I agreed. But I chose not to. Just like everyone chose not to help me when I was 18. There was a long silence on the other end. I thought we moved past that, Mom said quietly. You moved past it, I corrected gently. I just learned to carry it alone. We haven't spoken since that call 3 weeks ago. Vincent left a voicemail asking me to reconsider, to show mercy. I deleted it without responding. Theo sent me an email 2 weeks after our meeting, longer this time, explaining his situation, his struggles, his genuine desire to change. I archived it without replying. Because here's what I learned in those 12 years between the loan and the denial. Forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. Moving forward doesn't mean pretending the past never happened. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply say no to people who once had the power to destroy you. I didn't deny Theo's loan for revenge. I denied it because he earned that denial through every poor decision, every missed payment, every consequence he'd avoided for years. My job is to assess risk and make sound financial decisions. Theo Shaw was and remains a terrible risk. The fact that it also felt like closing a chapter I'd left open for too long was simply a bonus. Last week, I got promoted to Vice President of Lending Operations. My boss specifically mentioned my integrity and consistent decision-making as key factors. He has no idea that one of those decisions involved my stepbrother, and he never will because it was handled professionally and by the book. I bought myself a bottle of expensive wine to celebrate, something I'd never have been able to afford if Theo's loan hadn't taught me the value of every single dollar. I drank it alone in my condo, looking out at the city lights, and I realized something important. This story isn't really about revenge. It's about the journey from being a powerless teenager whose future was stolen to becoming a woman who controls her own narrative. It's about building something real from ruins someone else created. It's about the moment you realize the person who once had the power to destroy you now sits across your desk, asking permission you have every right to deny. Theo destroyed my credit when I was 18. But in doing so, he taught me that trust must be earned, that family doesn't excuse cruelty, and that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's a success. It's sitting behind that desk with the authority to say no. It's knowing you rebuilt everything they tried to break. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories about justice that takes the long road but always arrives. And remember, sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is become the person who no longer needs anything from the people who hurt you. See you in the next one.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoy watching Karma, Payback, come full circle every week, we dive into tales of betrayal and poetic justice. Don't miss the next one. Tap the subscribe button and join the Revenge Squad.